And looking at gender investment in Uganda, at Open Capital, we term it as gender lens investing. It is on a growing trend in Uganda as so many investors are picking it up and also picking up that term around gender lens investing that was developed internationally. So when you look at what is happening in Uganda right now, it is primarily focusing, most of the investors are turning towards the agriculture sector. And this is due to the fact that women play a key role in the key agriculture sector as one, given that, they're involved in mostly the production activities of that. But then, despite the fact that many women are involved in the agriculture sector, most of them do not own land. So the farms are owned by male. And then second to that, some of them lack the adequate skills. They do not have assets, and generally making business slow, and which impact their growth. So if you look at that, then we went further into, what are the challenges that are women facing, and also what challenges are the different investors facing, because it has to be a demand and supply led side kind of thing. So if you look specifically like to the women, what is it that is hindering women from accessing financing? One is that most women are actually not aware of these different investment opportunities. And I think Isabella had started highlighting that. And due to the fact that they're not aware of them, so they cannot tap into these opportunities because they're actually growing, and so many investors are picking up gender lens investing. And what we saw with the focus on agribusinesses is that most women that are involved in agribusinesses, they are focused mainly on making sales and profit, and thus they're not keen on looking out for the different investments. And moving on from that, then we know that there are a lot of women in Uganda that own businesses, mostly the small and micro businesses. But then is that most of the businesses are not registered. So if they're not registered, then this is going to discourage different stakeholders like the investors from, supporting them or giving them money. And a key contributor to this is the low number, a key contributor to the low form of businesses of women is the low literacy rates, and also the low financial literacy rates. And with this, we kind of, linked it, to the various traditional and gender roles in some communities that sometimes foster, younger girls to get married or domestic duties. And in turn, women are not going to get involved in businesses rather than, attending to the home.
Yes.
And then building on further on that, now looking around still the formality of businesses, most businesses are not investor ready. So it's not that investors are going to look for, just being formally registered, but then they have other key requirements that they look for that make a business attractive. For example, do they have audited financials? Do they have systems and processes in place? Do they have clear growth plans? Do they even have a team, on ground? And with this, it attracts more investors towards these businesses. Then thirdly, actually going back to the part around, businesses having being investor ready, some of the businesses have now, are taking on like different business development services to help them streamline the operations and become more investor ready. But then also those services are costly. Like if you look at the different, service providers around Uganda or Kampala, they are very expensive. So most of the businesses cannot afford them, which further makes them, not being investor ready. And then lastly, around, what sometimes discourages women from looking out for financing is that they're actually more risk averse and they are less likely, to take out financing. And this is because most times they're discouraged by the strict investor requirements that different, financial institutions look out for. For example, like going to a commercial bank, they'll require you to provide collateral in terms of land or in building or a vehicle. But then sometimes, women do not own this. And for example, like only 16% of women in Uganda own land. So with this, these challenges definitely, hinder women from accessing financing. But then now if we go onto the other side, like the supply side, like what are the investors or other stakeholders supporting women, like what are they facing and what is stopping them from supporting, women businesses. With this one is that there is limited investor familiarity of sectors and business community, mostly for those that are showing interest in women investing in Uganda. And with that, looking at the different trends, majority of the investors interested, in generally investing in Uganda, they are internationally based, but then they do not have local teams on ground. So with the teams that they have, it will lead, to biases while they're trying to accurately assess the business environment in Uganda. So they'll be interpreting the risk of the business differently, given they do not have that local context. And this in turn results into tight capital limits, and then also discourages businesses. If someone gives you the high collateral terms or high interest rates, at the end of the day, we're going to back out from that. And then second to that, this also goes back to, the internationally based best investors, given that they're more keen on, journalists investing in Uganda. They sometimes they're not aware on how to identify these businesses. So they tend to rely on networks or, informal referrals to source investees, but sometimes they're so biased, and they also have a select number of businesses. So sometimes they find themselves recycling businesses, and then most of them, and some of them also, present more male entrepreneurs, yet, the investors are looking out for women. And going back, relating the other challenge, relating it back, to the formalization of businesses. The fact that they're struggling to find, the fact that most women businesses are not formal, then definitely investors do not have where to identify the businesses to support from. And then some investors also lack, adequate resources to collect or measure meaningful impact, when trying to assess the impact that they're going to get from investing in women. For example, the easiest metrics to look at are the, how many women employees do you have, or is the company women owned? But if you look at it and just even going back, to the report that we developed for us, as we're trying to develop the gender lens investing definition, we didn't look at only women entrepreneurs or women-owned businesses. We further went on to look at what are the different women involved in the value chain, and also how are different businesses producing products or services that that lead to the empowerment of women in one way or another. So we had that holistic definition, not just focusing at women-owned businesses. And with this, some investors are starting this challenge. Some investors, do not have adequate resources to assess that impact. For example, how would an investor assess like the improved nutrition of a child, right? Yet that is a product that most women that supports most women and also their children. And then with that, some do not even have the impact metrics to look at, and others are also definitely on a learning journey to identify these impacts. But then most of them actually that are leveraging internationally based frameworks. For example, the 2X challenge. I don't know if people on the call have heard about it, but the 2X challenge is like a global body that has these different stakeholders around the world that are really keen on investing in women, and they have come together to raise funds and then being able to develop interventions on how to increase gender lens investing globally. And they have developed a framework, and there are also other frameworks that different organizations are using. So sometimes some local investors tend to use that, but then it may not also really reflect what is happening on ground, which goes back to the challenge that I started with. Do they know the local context? How a business is set up in Uganda and that. So building up from these challenges that we looked at, we're able now to develop a framework. This is specifically for the agriculture sector, and this was mainly for for different businesses, investors, or fund managers, or BDS providers to be able to look at certain criteria and be able to see how they can assess feasibility of of investing in different businesses, not specifically women owned, but you could have a business that is targeting improving women livelihoods, or that is employing different women. So yeah, in a nutshell, that is it, and that is what led to the development of the criteria that you referred to earlier on, the framework that you referred to earlier.